You're all welcome to this introduction to the peoples of the Baltic. First, a word on terminology. Baltic refers to the area surrounding the Baltic Sea, which we call the Baltic region. Technically, we start out from the so-called drainage area, that is the area in which all water flows towards the Baltic Sea. This drainage area makes up our common environment. However, it is also a region which has a common history and culture. It is quite natural since once water was by far the most important way of communication for both friendly and unfriendly voyages. Today, we hope cooperation and friendship will characterize our connections, since we all depend on each other. Therefore, we also need to learn more about one another. That is why we have put together this introductory program. The Baltic region is very heterogeneous. In fact, one of the most heterogeneous regions in Europe. At least some 15 languages are spoken here, a great number of minorities are found, several religions and different political and economic traditions have evolved here. East meets west and north meets south. 14 countries, in whole or in part, make up the region. What follows are introductory presentations from 10 of these countries, as well as 2 presentations from peoples without countries of their own. These presentations have been made by and with your fellow students. We will begin with the 2 Finno-Ugric countries, Finland and Estonia, on the northeastern part of the region. Other Finno-Ugric peoples in the area includes the Karelians, the Veps and the Ingrians. In both Finland and Estonia there are important minority groups of other origins. In Finland, the Swedish minority, and in Estonia, the Russian minority, although the situation for these minorities are quite different. The Finns and Estonians are close enough to be able to understand each other's languages, and recently their contacts have increased dramatically. We will begin with Finland.
Hello, my name is Karina and I'm going to be one of your guides on this tour in Finland.
And I am Björn. Welcome to follow us for the next 12 minutes.
I'm delighted to start this presentation here in Turku. It is where I live, where I study and where I work. Turku is the oldest city of Finland and it also used to be the former capital. And then of course the first university, Åbo Academy, was founded here.
Turku is the oldest city in Finland?
Yes, and this part was the only that was left after the big fire in
1827.
Was it that? Okay.
1827.
And then there's still those wonderful small shops where you can buy candies and...
Probably the oldest shops in Turku.
It must be. And then there are, for example, shoemakers and
a post office.
A post office and a bakery, and then I think there even was a coffee shop a little bit further on.
Our social welfare and educational system is built in a way that gives almost everyone a fair chance to start and live a good life. Even though the recession today has caused lots of unemployed people.
People in Finland like to live in houses or apartments of their own. This area, built in the 50s, is a very common sight in almost every society in the country. Those who have more money can afford to live nearby the sea.
The archipelago in the southwest of Finland is unique in the world. The area between Finland and Sweden consists of more than 8,000 smaller and bigger islands. A paradise for everyone, and an area that thousands and thousands of tourists visit every summer. Besides tourism, fishing, fish farming, and agriculture are the most important activities for the population in this area.
Another place to find peace and beauty is, for example, here in Mustio. This was one of the villages where the industrialization took place. Today, this village is a place for recreation and memories. It was in a society like this where people, for the first time, got used to eating potatoes.
When people in Finland for the first time got used to potatoes, it was seen as a very exclusive product, something only for rich people. Today, potatoes are one of the most important products on the Finnish dining table.
When you arrive in Helsinki, today's capital of Finland, you'll probably start your visit here. From this spot, it's easy to reach every interesting place in Helsinki. I prefer to use the tram car. It's easy, it's fast, and you don't have to look for a parking place.
The political stage is situated here in Helsinki, where we have our president, our government and parliament. It is here in this building Finland was declared as the independent Republic of Finland in 1917. Before that, Finland was a part of Sweden until 1809, and after that a part of Russia until 1970.
When you walk along the streets, in the parks, or down by the sea, I'm sure you'll notice that Helsinki is a very international city. Today, there are 142 nationalities living here. Here are also lots of beautiful buildings and churches. For example, the Uspensky Cathedral. It is one of the main buildings for the Orthodox population. The main religion in Finland is Lutheranism. In Helsinki, you will also find the biggest university in Finland with more than 20,000 students. One of my absolute favorite places in Helsinki is this fortress Suomenlinna. I try to visit it at least once every summer.
What do you do then?
I go to summer theaters, picnic, and just walk around.
I suppose it has had many different missions during the past 200 or 300 years.
Yes, it was a fortress in the beginning, of course.
And a jail.
Yes, it has been a jail after the Civil War in 1918. It was used as a working camp.
And nowadays it is a place for recreation and picnics and so on, theaters.
That's right, and then people are also living there.
In Helsinki, as in many communities along the coast, you will notice that Finland has two official languages, Finnish and Swedish. Even though the Swedish-speaking Finns are just about 6% of the population, you can, for example, have social and healthcare in Swedish. We also have a possibility to get an education and to speak in courts in our own language. In Finland we got thousands of lakes.
And this is one of them. Savonlinna Opera Festival. Ludwig van Beethoven, Fidelio. Every summer in Savonlinna there is an international opera festival. And for example this year there was Giuseppe Verdi Macbeth. The Finnish people is and has always been very close to nature. It's quite understandable since we're only 5 million people in a very big country. The population density is 14 persons per square kilometer. That means that the Finnish gold, our forests, take up quite a lot, or a very big actually part of our country. For example, this view is very common in Finland.
Then of course you had the Finnish sauna. It's a tradition and definitely something more than just washing yourself. It's almost a ritual. It's a way to rest, to calm down. In my opinion, a sauna should be like this, heated by wood. It is well known that paper industry is the biggest branch of industry in Finland. Forestry, paper industry and agriculture has changed our environment a lot. The environmental situation in Finland could in general be described as quite good. Although we have problems too, like air and water pollution. In my opinion, the biggest environmental problem is the bad situation of the Baltic Sea. In every city and town you can find at least one bigger newspaper and several smaller ones.
That means that we are well informed about what's going on in our society, and that is really an important part of our democracy.
As equality is.
Yes, there have actually been a lot of discussions during the last years about the equality between women and men.
And this started actually in 1906 when Finland, as the second country in the world, gave women the right to vote in elections.
This is the barn swallow, one of the symbols of our nation, the national bird of Estonia. Our country, Estonia, is situated on the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. With its area, slightly more than 45,000 square kilometers, it is the second smallest country in the region. About 1.5 million people live here, about 71% of them live in towns. The density of population is about 35 persons per square kilometer. This is Tallinn, the capital city of Estonia. Estonia is a republic. Its birthday is on the 24th of February. On that day, in 1918, our independence was proclaimed. During next 2 years, the country was occupied by the German and Russian troops, but the republic survived. The peace treaty between Estonia and Russia, signed in Tartu on the 2nd of February 1920, was the first foreign recognition for both countries. The independence was to last only for 20 years. On June 16, 1940, as the result of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact signed the year before, the Soviet troops entered the country, demanding the change of the government. Later, a kind of elections were held, and finally, in August 1940, Estonia formally joined the USSR. In late 80s, a new wave of national awakening began. Estonia started to move away from the USSR. Finally, on the 20th of August 1991, Estonia again became an independent state. The new constitution came into force in July 1992, and according to this, the first free elections were held in the autumn. These brought up a new generation of politicians.
Now let's make a break with the policy and get acquainted with the nature of the country. The low population density, 35 inhabitants per square kilometer, means that a lot of place is left for the nature. About 40% of the whole territory is covered by forests, while fields take only some 20%. By the way, almost the same area is occupied by bogs. Northern Estonia is a plain limestone plateau with a cliff on the seashore. The cliff reaches the height of 56 meters at its highest points. Western Estonia is rich in bogs. It's a low and plain area, former seabed. Southern Estonia is quite mountainous compared with the other parts of the country. The age formations of the glaciations make the landscape mosaic and hillocky. The area has lots of hills, small lakes and small bogs. The highest point of the three Baltic states, the Munamägi hill, reaches 318 meters from the sea level. Estonia has about 1,200 lakes, which cover 4% of the total area. The biggest among them is Lake Peipsi. Situated on the eastern border of Estonia, it is the fifth biggest lake in Europe, with its 3,550 square kilometers. Due to its small territory, Estonia has no big rivers. The Narva River carries the water of Lake Peipsi to the sea. The Emajõgi River, connecting Lakes Võrtsjärv and Peipsi, has found its place also in the folklore. A very peculiar feature is the Baltic Sea, forming picturesque bays, fine sand beaches and numerous islands. Saaremaa and Hiiumaa are the biggest among them. The total number of islands is some 1,500, and due to land uprise, this number is increasing slowly. In many places, unique plant communities, the alvars, appear. The nature is protected in 1 national park and in 5 state nature reserves. The Lahemaa National Park, situated on the northern coast, was founded in 1971, being the first national park in the former USSR.
Estonia is poor in natural resources. Forest and peat in the bogs already mentioned. The two only mineral resources are oil shale and phosphorite. Oil shale in the northeast has concentrated a quite large industrial area with oil shale mining, chemistry, power stations. This industrial area causes a lot of environmental problems. Phenols in the mine water, spoiled lands, ash hills, alkaline dust coming from the chimneys of the power station, radioactive substances in Sillamäe are some of them. Another group of environmental problems are connected with the Soviet army. In spite of all political controversies, they are living, but the areas they used very often look like a desert. The pictures you see are made this summer in Baltiski, in a former naval harbor. Coming back to economy, we have to notice that the political and economical reforms going on have had a great influence on it. The main reason encouraging the coming of the market economy is our own money, Estonian krone. The changes in economy are so rapid that it's rather difficult to follow them. The general tendency is that the industries oriented on the eastern market are decreasing, while those who succeeded in exporting something to the West are enjoying good times. The changes reflect also in very active trading. For example, Estonia has become one of the greatest exporters of metals in Europe. Even in the street, you can buy all kinds of goods. The markets are fulfilled with foreign products, but at the same time our agriculture is in deep crisis. For long it has been a traditional way of life for our people. In 1949-1950 the small farms were joined into kolkhozes. Now the land is being given back to its former owner, but the newborn private farms are seldom able to take a quick start. So the right word to describe nowadays agriculture is chaos.
Who are the people who live here? The Estonians are probably one of the oldest nations in Europe. It's proved that our ancestors lived here on this spot of land already 5,000 years ago. Now the share of Estonians in the whole population is about 65%. Our language belongs to the Finno-Ugric group. Estonians are mainly Lutherans by the religion. The last 50 years brought a big non-Estonian community here. Now they form some 35% of the whole population. This is a very heterogeneous group, composed of different peoples from the former Soviet Union. The common feature for them is the Russian language they use. They have gathered in Tallinn, where they make up almost half of the population, and in 3 towns in northeast Estonia, Narva, Sillamäe and Kohtla-Järve, where they form the majority and work mainly in the big enterprises. Speaking about different peoples, we can't miss the minorities, who have been living in our country for centuries. The big forests in northeast Estonia and the shores of Lake Peipsi were the places where Russian people escaped from the religious reformation on the 17th century. The villages on the lake shores are still Russian populated. 100 years ago, the Kuremäe nunnery was built here. The smaller western islands were inhabited by the Swedes, but most of them left to Sweden in 1944. Up to the Second World War, we had quite a numerous German community, mainly in towns. In 1939, Hitler called them home. And last but not least, an interesting ethnical group who lives in the southeastern corner of Estonia, the Setu people. It's often argued either the language they speak is a special one or only a dialect of Estonian. Their territory has been outside the borders of Estonia for a very long time. That's why their religion is Russian Orthodox and their culture differs from that of the rest of Estonia.
The economical crisis and reforms have badly influenced the social patterns. The numbers of marriages and births are decreasing. The number of abortions is much higher than the birth rate. The number of population is decreasing. We have less children and more old people. while the average length of life is also decreasing. In order not to finish in these black tones, we shall just turn to the culture. Nowadays, the traditional housing can be seen only in the museums, but traditional dances are still alive.
Estonia is often grouped together with Latvia and Lithuania when we speak of the three Baltic states. In many respects, they're alike. The importance of singing and folklore in their respective national identities is, for example, quite unique. Although important minority groups have always been present, the Russian minority has increased dramatically since the end of the Second World War, when these poor countries became a part of the Soviet Union, something which lasted until 1991. However, in a more precise sense of speaking a Baltic language, we only have two Baltic peoples, the Latvians and the Lithuanians. Even though the Latvians and the Lithuanians are neighbors and have a distant common origin, they're quite different. They do not understand each other's languages, they have different religious traditions, and their pre-20th century histories are quite different. We will now hear from both the Latvians and the Lithuanians, and we will begin with the Latvians.
Now is summertime and we are in the city Jūrmala, which is the biggest seaside resort city of Latvia. This is a favorite place not only for holidaymakers, but also for young people who are gonna be students soon. And this is an excellent place to get prepared for examinations, because the biggest high schools are situated just 10 kilometers from here in the capital of Latvia, Riga. However, about studies we will talk later. You may be interested to know a little bit more about our country, so let's have a look from a distance. The Republic of Latvia lies on the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. Since ancient times, with its coastline exceeding 500 kilometers and easily accessible ports, Latvia has been a significant link between the states surrounding the Baltic Sea and Russia. The territory of Latvia corresponds to those of Lithuania and Ireland. The population of Latvia is 2.5 million people, scarcely populated, but 1/3 live in Riga, causing a number of ecological problems and social ones. The situation emerges as being more difficult due to the fact that almost all fossil fuels and resources for industry have to be imported. From ecological viewpoint, the problems like energy production, the conversion and utilization of toxic waste, the storage of radioactive matter, and the ecological problems created by the Soviet Army are still unsolved. Historically, Latvia was united by three ethnographical regions, which are very easily to distinguish. Imagine Riga being in the middle of a clock. Clockwise to the west is Kurzeme, north, Vidzeme, and east Latgale. In each of them, people speak in a bit different dialects, but together Latvian language itself is one of the two living Baltic languages, the other one being Lithuanian. You see our national monument, which is a unification symbol of all three ethnographical regions, and as a main clock axis standing right in the center of Riga. The figure Mother Latvia keeps up 3 stars symbolizing those 3 regions, and that is present also in the coat of arms of the Republic of Latvia. July of this year, when we are making the video documentary, has become the important history when the legal constitution of Latvia as independent state was re-established after more than 50 years' time, and again we have our own president. The way to independence has been quite a long time period, and many changes took place, especially in the population structure. Today, native nation makes just a half of all population in Latvia, and contemporarily Latvian language finds itself in a quite complicated situation, as almost one half of people are Russian-speaking. Meanwhile, one of the main cornerstones of Latvia's economy has been bridging a gap between East and West, which is of high importance to our country's economy now. Right now, it is very important to keep in reasonable balance nation's survival trends, role of European bridge, and rights to independence. Hello again. My name is Valdis. We are back in Riga. This is a time of exams, and I'm trying to enter Faculty of History at the University of Latvia. There I met some friends and discovered that we come from different parts of Latvia. For instance, I come from Latgale, which is eastern part of Latvia, known as Blue Lake District. There are about 3,000 lakes in Latvia, and more than half of them are in my native land. Latgale is well known for its diversity of religions. We have very strong Roman Catholic traditions. This autumn we are expecting Pope of Rome's visit to our famous cathedral in Agluona. Latgale has also the strongest Russian Orthodox traditions, and only in Latgale there is parish of all believers. And certainly we have also Lutherans and other religions. Such a diversity of religions and traditions has inspired me to study history. I want to know more about where we come from and understand better the land which has always been a melting pot of diverse cultures and crossroad of different nationalities. Still, there is much to learn and discover.
Hi, I'm Zane. My native land is Vidzeme, and I'm really proud that the highest peak in Latvia is located here. Although it's only more than 300 meters high, we call Vidzeme a mountain land. Latvians have rich traditions, and one of the most famous ones is the celebration of Midsummer. It's the shortest night of the year, and we call it Ligo Festival. Since old times, mountains, or better say, hilltops, have been the best places where to make fire. The Ligo fire gives fertility to farming land, as far as the light from burning tar barrel on the pole reaches it. So it becomes really clear why it's so important to make fire at the highest point possible. But the most important belief about the Ligo night, and I really keep to it, says, "Who sleeps at the Ligo night will sleep the whole summer." My native land Vidzeme has also one of the biggest woodlands in Latvia, and it's the only place of survival for rare species. A few days ago I saw a black stork, something you do not see often at all. That is why I want to study biology. There's so much to see and investigate in my country.
Aizkalniņa ezeriņš līgo, līgo. Aiz
Hi, I'm Carlos. I'm coming from Kurzem, better known as Kurland. This part of Latvia has the longest sea border. Therefore, Kurzem is very famous with old seaman traditions. Tobago and Trinidad in South America are old colonies of Kurland. You still can find Latvian names for the street there. Moreover, history tells about severe fights between ancient Kurlanders and Vikings for division of the areas of influence. At the top of Kurland, a small Latvian minority of almost 100 people live. They belong to Finno-Ugrish branch, having their own Latvian language till nowadays. The biggest forests and the oldest nature reserve is also here. Nowadays, Kurzem is at the front of new changes. For instance, organic farming. I'm captured by the idea of ecologically clean technologies in farming and want to be back from my studies and get a lot into practice. I trust that it is one of the ways for Latvia to get into European market. And that's why I am not going to be a seaman.
Isn't it exciting that right this year and this month, all the regions of Latvia come together again for the biggest tradition alive, the Latvian Song and Dance Festival in Riga. This is an event where you will meet all of us, either as participants or observers. And no wonder, through all the times and changes, a song has been the source of strongest inspiration and fulfillment, even stronger than words.
I'm Erikas Antonavičius. I want to share with you some facts and stories about the history of my country and its people. Lithuania lies on the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. It has a population of 3.7 million, of which 80% are Lithuanians. Lithuania is a country of fields and meadows, lakes and rivers, rolling hills and wood. Forests cover 27% of its territory. The capital city of Lithuania is Vilnius, first mentioned in written sources in 1323. Lithuanian cities abound with parks. As a matter of fact, Vilnius is one of the greenest capital of Europe. Vilnius is a city of fascinating history and unique architecture. Its buildings, particularly churches, are a mixture of several architectural styles. The old town of Vilnius is one of the largest of the kind in Europe. Incidentally, the geographic center of Europe is only 25 kilometers away from Lithuania's capital. For centuries, Lithuania has been an agricultural nation. Rural population accounts for 30% of Lithuania's inhabitants. At present, Lithuania is implementing an agrarian reform which aims to privatize the state farms of the Soviet era. In its current state, the nation's agriculture is geared to the needs of East European and Russian markets. A part of Soviet economic zone for 50 years, Lithuania played a significant role in the development of various technologies and computerized information systems. As the country now switches to a free market system, its most important assets are its people, their knowledge and expertise. Lithuania's environment has inherited a number of serious problems, such as river pollution adds to the deteriorating condition of the Baltic Sea. Several cities, including Kaunas and Šiauliai, have no water treatment facilities. Land reclamation of the Soviet era disrupted the structure of Lithuanian soil. Rural wells are contaminated due to the faulty use of fertilizers. The Ignalina nuclear power plant is a particularly grave hazard of Lithuania's environment. The Lithuanian ancestors, the Baltic tribes, settled the territory some 2,300 years BC. Lithuanian speaks an Indo-European language, one of the most archaic languages of the family. It is also among the oldest in the world, which makes it a valuable instrument for the studies of Indo-European culture and history. A key source for the studies of ancient Lithuanian beliefs and mythology is a folklore of Lithuania's ethnic regions, Žemaitija, Aukštaitija, Dzūkija and Suvalkija, as well as ancient rituals and rites, traditional art forms and symbols. Inhabitants of the four ethnic regions speak distinct dialects of the Lithuanian language and observe different ritual traditions and customs. Their characters and lifestyles also vary. Lithuania is a Catholic country, the last in Europe to have adopted Christianity over 600 years ago. However, element of pagan rituals such a cult of fire and offering to the goddess Gabia survived into 19th century. The Catholic faith survived and prevailed over the 50 years of forced atheism of the Soviet period. Alongside with Catholicism, Lithuania is also home of practicing Russian Orthodox, old ritual, evangelical, Lutheran, and other believers. The state ensures equal support to and tolerance of all existing confessions. The state of Lithuania emerged in the Middle Ages. Its name was first mentioned in 1009th year. Following 2 centuries of the onslaught by European knight orders, the united forces of Lithuania and Poland defeated the Teutonic Order in the Battle of Grunwald in 1310. The 15th century, Lithuania was one of the most powerful states in Europe, with its borders stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Late in the 18th century, Lithuania was incorporated into the Russian Empire and belonged to it until World War I, when it was occupied by Germany. In 1918, Lithuania restored independence and adopted the major symbols of statehood, including the national emblem, Vytis, the national tricolor, and the anthem, Tautiška giesmė, by Vincas Kudirka. Later on, the nation elected the head of the state president, adopted the constitution, and they introduced the national currency, litas. In 1940, Soviet occupation of Lithuania destroyed its statehood once again. During the period of Soviet rule, Lithuania lost about a third of its population. Some were exiled to Siberia, others perished in the post-war resistance struggle, still others emigrated to the West. On March 11, 1990, Lithuania declared the restoration of independence. Soviet effort to keep Lithuania in the empire culminated on January 13, 1991, when the entire nation stood up against Soviet tanks and automatic guns. Over a dozen people were killed at the strategic site of TV Tower. Today, Lithuania again is an independent democratic state with its constitution, president, parliament, and national currency. The Republic of Lithuania is full member of the United Nations and the Council of Europe, with diplomatic relations with 82 countries of the world. In its culture, Lithuania seeks to maintain a continuity of tradition. The 20th century art and culture bear a marked imprint of the heritage left by the composer and artist Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis, well known. At present, the survival of Lithuania's culture is largely due to the dedication of young and gifted artists, actors, and the musicians, since the state subsidies for the arts are insignificant. Only the best and the most talented can hope for state support.
And finally, a few words about myself, my family, and our daily life, which is typical of most Lithuanians. I live in 3 rooms apartment in apartment house downtown Vilnius, together with my parents and my brother. Most families in Lithuania have 1 or 2 children and live in 2 or 3 room apartments, and some of them have pets.
Many families spend their free time in the open, often in the garden plots. My family, too, has a garden in the suburbs where we get by a car. What else? I'm a technical university graduate with a major in economy. At present, I work in promotion and advertising. I speak Lithuanian, Russian, English, and Polish. I've got a lot of friends and enjoy being with them. I hope my story has added to your understanding of Lithuania. Goodbye.
Ja, det var allt för den här gången om det här baltiska länderna.